This is the console application exercise in JavaScript. I have the project open in VS Code, and I've got the README file. So we're going to create and run a console application from the command line. Our first objective, we'll run through our use case. So given the user is prompted to enter input into the screen, so we'll say, hey, type something. When the user enters that input and hits the enter key, the system displays the reverse of that text that was entered. So we'll reverse it, display it back to the user, and then we'll wait for the user to hit enter one more time before we close the application. We can use node-test to run our tests, and we'll use that to drive our implementation. Once we're done, we will run this as a console application, a command line application using Node, and that will conclude it. So let's get started. I've got the project open here. There's a package.json, so on the terminal, let me run an npm on just to make sure that any modules are going to be installed correctly. All right, everything's good to go. Let's go ahead and run node-test. And we do get an error, which is what we'd expect. And it's saying 0 does not equal 3. So let's take a look at the test, see what's going on. So in our test, we are creating a user interface object that is equal to a new AI user interface. So think of an AI user interface as an automated user. What we're doing is we're automating the interactions. Since we're not going to have an actual person at the keyboard reading and typing, we want to automate those interactions so that we can interrogate that later. That's what this AI user interface is for. We're going to call the set text to type when prompted. So when prompted, the text that we want this automated user to type is the word testing. From there, we'll create our mirror application given the user interface, and we'll call run, our method under test. From that, we're going to do our assertions. So we'll go and get the lines displayed to the user. So these are the lines that the user would have read, that we would have read. We're going to make sure that there are 3, and this is the assertion that is failing right now. There are 0. And then we just want to make sure that each of those lines has the text that we see here. So they first should have seen enter the text reverse, then the reverse of the text, and then finally press enter to close the application. So our test is failing. Let's go ahead and head into the run method. And we'll see that our run method is empty. So this is the old school, basically syntax for declaring a class in JavaScript. The newer syntax uses the class keyword. You're welcome to use the class keyword. I'm going to keep this in the old school syntax just because it's useful to understand what this looks like and how it works. You're going to run into this every now and then. So our run, what we're going to need to do in our run is effectively implement the README. So our use case is going to be coded in the run method. And that basically becomes our policy. So let's start working through that. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to prompt the user to type something into the screen. Now we're going to do that through the user interface that's coming in. So in this syntax, I don't need to create a field. I can actually use the user interface because it is within the scope of the class itself. The constructor is within the scope of the whole thing. So we'll simply go to the user interface. We'll say user interface dot, and now I need to create a method that will display something to the user. So I'll just say write line. And what do we want to write to the user? Let's say type something. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we need to wait for the user to hit enter and read the text, and then we're going to reverse that. So let's start with that. So we'll say text equals user interface.readLine. I'll just do the opposite of write line so that it's simple. We'll say read line. We'll wait for them to hit enter and get that text. Now we need to reverse this text. So let's create a variable, reverse text equals, and in JavaScript, this will be split reverse join on empty string. So that's the one-liner in JavaScript for reversing a string. Now that we have that, we need to display that back to the user. So we'll use our write line method that we already created. So user interface.writeLine, reverse text. So that takes care of that part of it. Now we need to wait for the user to hit enter. So let's display one more message that says, hey, press enter when you're done, and then we will wait for them to hit enter. So user interface write line, press enter when done. And then finally, user interface.readLine. And readLine will give us back what they typed, but we don't really care what they typed. We're just waiting for the enter key, so we're not going to put a variable in front of that. We're not going to store the value that gets returned. We're just waiting for the readLine. So that's our implementation here to make sure everything's working. Now the problem is our user interface, our AI user interface, doesn't have the methods readLine and writeLine. Now in JavaScript, we don't have true inheritance, we don't have true polymorphism, but we can fake it through something called duck typing. And so what that means is we just need to have these methods, readLine and writeLine, on the object itself. So let's create these. We're going to have readLine and writeLine. So we'll do this dot readLine equals a function, and readLine takes no arguments but returns a string. It's going to return the text that was typed in. So we'll come back to this in a moment. And then writeLine. We're going to need a writeLine method that will take a string and doesn't return anything. So this dot writeLine equals a function given some text or some message or some content. Any one of these will be fine. I'm going to say text. Makes sense to me. All right, so I've got my read line, I've got my write line. Now what I need to do is implement these. So write line, this one's probably going to be the easier one, so we'll go ahead and start with that. Write line is going to go to our get lines displayed to user. So these two are tied together. So whenever we write a line, the lines displayed to user need to return what those lines were. So we're just going to store that into an array. You can see we're just returning an empty array for now. Let's create an array for ourselves. So we'll say const output lines. I can call it anything I want. Output line seems like a good name. This is going to be returning those output lines. So we haven't changed anything yet, but now what we want to do on write line is we're going to add to that. So we'll say output lines.push text, and now our output lines will add whatever text is being called each time with the write line. Read line and set text to type when prompted, these are also going to be tied together. So whatever we set up to type, that is what the read line is going to return. So this is what we're going to type. Read line is what they actually typed. So again, we just need to hold on to that somewhere. So let's create a value const text to type. And we'll start off with null. And now here, all we need to do is call text to type equals text. So we're storing that, we're holding it. And then read line, we just return the text to type. All right, let's run our test now. Let's see if we are in better shape. All right, so we do have an error. Let's see what we've got here. Assignment to, oh, right. Text to type has to be a variable, so we'll make that let. Let's try that again. All right, so now we've got another error, and it's saying the value type something does not match the value enter the text to reverse. What's going on here? Well, the test wants the text to be enter the text to reverse, but in the actual application, I did type something. So we just need those to match. So let me change those values, and I'm going to do the same thing on the last line. So press enter to close the application instead of press enter when done. Change those, let's rerun the test. And now we have a pass. So that's the testing part, that's objective 1. Now objective 2 is we need to run this as a console application. That's going to be in the index. And we'll notice the index here is already creating a run method or creating a mirror application calling run, but it's using a console user interface. Now this is going to blow up if I run it now. So let me just show that. Node index. And we get an error. And the reason we get an error is write line is not a function, and similarly read line is not a function. So our console user interface also needs to have these write line and read line methods. So let me copy those really fast. We're going to change what we're doing here. So read line and then write line. We're copying from the AI user interface to the console user interface. Let me get rid of the implementations because these are going to be very different. So now I need to implement these methods. With the write line, that one's pretty simple. All we're going to do is go to console log, and then there's our text. So that one's very simple. We're just printing out to the screen. The read line is going to be a little trickier. There's not really, there kind of is, but there's not really a API built into Node that lets us read from the console. So we'll have to import a module or a package to read from the console to get the type or the text. So let's open up an internet browser really fast. And we'll say node read, this looks good, read from console synchronously. So looking at this, we can use a readline sync package. So that'd be an npm install to do that. Looking at that, once you get readline sync, it's just .question, and that gives it back. So that's pretty straightforward. The second one is a read line. This is a custom synchronous wrapper. Where we're gonna, okay, so it's gonna create a promise and then call it async. That's actually not gonna work for our case. You can't really convert inside a sync method from async, so that's not going to execute for us well. Finally, use fs for simplicity, so we can use fs, and we can actually call read file sync with the number 0 to get the value in. That feels a little hacky, so let's just use the readline sync. We're going to npm install readline sync here. So let's go back. We will paste this in, npm I readline sync. All right, so now that we have our package, we're going to import that. And it is not going to be in parentheses, so we'll say const read line sync, little l apparently, equals require read line sync. All right, now that we've got that, we should be able to return that out. So again, going down to the code, if I will scroll, it's just readline sync.question. Readline sync.question, and we're just going to return that. So that seems like it's working. Let's try it. So let's run node index.js into the text reverse. This is Chad's awesome test. There it is. It read it, it reversed it, press enter to close, and we're done. that concludes the JavaScript version of the console application.